well, introducing rain to many parts. However, there will be clearer skies, particularly across the east, but even here we'll see some rain by the end of the night. And temperatures, well, where they should be during the day at this time of the year, 14 to 15 Celsius, well above average. So a cloudy start to Wednesday morning. Showery outbreaks of rain continue to push their way north and eastwards. It will be windy. We will see some gales still around the coasts across the west, but it will brighten up as we move into the afternoon. Plenty of sunny spells developing, staying gusty, but despite that, temperatures will lift to 18, 19, 20 Celsius. The average here should be around about 14 or 15 in the south, in the north around about 11. Through the evening time on Wednesday, some clear spells around, the risk of a few showers, perhaps some longer spells of rain across the far northwest of Scotland. It remains blustery, and then overnight we see further cloud and rain pushing up from the south. Some of this perhaps heavy at times across the far southwest, but generally light and patchy in nature. This will help keep temperatures up once again in double figures, perhaps just dipping to single figures under any clearing skies. But most places will start Thursday on a cloudy note, perhaps some sunshine first thing, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland. Thursday overall a cloudy day, some patchy rain in places, but there will be dry weather around, 1 or 2 glimmers of sunshine. The wind should slowly ease, but it will stay blustery around the coasts. To end the working week and into the weekend, it stays mixed. There will be some rain at times, some stronger winds, but temperatures well above average.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, hello there. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co.
Just today, we've got news that Rashid Sunak is now the Prime Minister.
Bit awkward, but yes, he is indeed right. We do have a new Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak, of course, officially his first day on the job today. And I want to talk to you guys about the 3 Ps. It's all been going on, hasn't it? The people in the Cabinet. Have you liked what you've seen so far? I want to recap who's in, who's out. And I wonder, your fantasy cabinet, if you had one, have those ideals been met? Who's missing? Who should have been there that isn't? And who are you pleased has been kept out of it? I want your thoughts on all of that tonight. And the second P I want is policy. What should Rishi and his new government's priorities be over the next 30 days? Indeed, over the next 100 days, where do you want their focus to be? And the last P of the night, public reaction. Did you hear during Rishi's speech tonight? The song blaring out of the speakers, I predict a riot. Do you? I wonder, What is the public reaction going to be? There's been lots of calls that democracy is dead. Is it that there should be a general election? Really? Anyway, we'll have all of that and more to come. But first, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening to you. It certainly has been busy in Downing Street today. The new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, appointing his new cabinet. So it's been confirmed then that Jeremy Hunt is staying on as Chancellor of the Exchequer, but it's not yet clear whether or not he'll publish his fiscal plan on Monday. Other key appointments that took place in Downing Street today include Dominic Raab, who's returning as Deputy Prime Minister. He also takes on the portfolio for Justice. James Cleverly remains Foreign Secretary. And one other reassuring appointment as far as some quarters are concerned, Suella Braverman, again, Home Secretary. Ben Wallace, I can also confirm, is staying on as Defence Secretary. You can see there Grant Shapps, Business Secretary. Penny Mordaunt remaining Leader of the House of Commons in one of the later appointments from this afternoon. Well, earlier, speaking for the first time as the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak vowed to fix what he called the mistakes of Liz Truss's leadership. He pledged to place economic stability at the heart of his government after he met King Charles, but warned the country should brace itself for difficult decisions ahead.
I understand how difficult this moment is. After the billions of pounds it cost us to combat COVID, after all the dislocation that caused, in the midst of a terrible war that must be seen successfully to its conclusions, I fully appreciate how hard things are.
Well, looking at how hard things are, new figures show the price of low-cost groceries like pasta, tea and cooking oil have all soared. The Office for National Statistics says budget items have increased by around 17% over the last 12 months. And that comes as inflation returned to a 40-year high, with prices up 10.1% in a year. Food prices were the biggest driver of highest living costs this month. Now, support for energy bills is set to become law after it was fast-tracked through Parliament. It includes the energy price guarantee, which means households will pay an average of £2,500 a year until April next year. It also addresses the energy bill relief scheme, which will help the public sector with discounts. In other news today, an investigation is underway after two men were killed in a shooting in London. Officers were called to an address in Ilford in the early hours of this morning following reports of a fight and shots being fired. They found three men with injuries. A man in his 20s was pronounced dead at the scene, while another died a short time later. The third victim remains in a critical condition in hospital. Police say no arrests have been made. The Qatari government has denied a British human rights activist was arrested and then released by police in Doha. That comes after Peter Tatchell staged the first public LGBT+ protest in any Gulf state ahead of next month's World Cup. A video appeared to show him being approached by a police officer outside the National Museum in the country.
This is the first ever LGBT+ protest in Qatar or any Gulf state, but also I sought to draw attention to the abuse of the rights of women and migrant workers as well. I stand in solidarity with those brave Qatari human rights defenders who cannot express their point of view because they fear arrest, jail, and possibly even torture. I salute them. They are the true heroes.
The sports brand Adidas has announced it's terminating its partnership with the rapper Kanye West amid growing backlash over his anti-Semitic comments and a warning for television viewers. The video we're about to show does contain some flashing imagery. Well, the company says it won't tolerate any sort of hate speech. That comes after users on social media condemn the singer's posts as anti-Semitic. Adidas says it's made repeated efforts early this month to privately resolve the situation. A Russian court has rejected an appeal by the American basketball player Brittany Griner against her 9-year prison sentence. The two-time Olympic gold medalist was arrested at Moscow airport in February for the possession and smuggling of drugs. She was found with vape cartridges containing cannabis oil in her suitcase, which is banned in Russia. A US diplomat has criticised the court's rejection, calling it excessive and disproportionate. Here, Royal Mail workers went on strike today in a long-running dispute over pay and conditions. The 24-hour walkout is the latest industrial action taken by members of the Communication Workers Union. It says Royal Mail members have had a 2% pay deal imposed upon them at a time when inflation is in double figures. Another strike is scheduled for Tuesday. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, I'll be with you until 7 o'clock tonight and keeping me company on, how shall we say this, a busy news day is my panel. Baroness Jacqueline Foster, who's a former Conservative MEP and now a member of the House of Lords, and Peter Edwards, who's the former editor of Labour List. And you know the drill, don't you, on Dewbs & Co? It's not just about us, it's about you guys at home. I want your thoughts tonight. How are you feeling? Many of you, by the way, last night was getting in touch with me when I was asking, are you a Tory member? How do you feel? Lots of you, and I can tell you lots of you, wrote in and said that you were members and now you'd resigned that membership because you were outraged with what was going on. Already, I can tell you, I've had lots of you writing in saying that your position has now changed. Do I take it you've liked what you've seen? Get in touch with all your thoughts on today's going on. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. You could tweet me at gbnews. Darren McCaffrey joins us live from Downing Street. Darren McCaffrey, in the last few minutes, we've just heard as well, haven't we? Michael Gove returning to his position as the Levelling Up Secretary. Tell us more.
Yeah, very good evening, Michelle. Ministers are still coming and going here in Downing Street, up and down the street. As you say, in the last couple of minutes, Michael Gove returned back to the Housing and Levelling Up Department, in which he was sacked from in the dying hours of Boris Johnson's premiership. Notably, though, we have had Jeremy Hunt reinstated as the Chancellor, essentially carrying on in that role. James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, also staying in his position. Suella Braverman, though, is back in the Home Office, having resigned last week. She was the Home Secretary last Tuesday. She remains the Home Secretary today, though Grant Shapps, who was temporarily in between, has been moved to the Business Department. I think the other really notable news tonight is on Penny Mordaunt. Now, there was an expectation that she was going to get a big job in government. That has simply not happened. She remains as leader of the House of Commons. I think she made it clear to allies that she did want to be Foreign Secretary, but it is felt, clearly by the Sunak camp, that was a step too far, and I'm not entirely sure her supporters will be very happy with that decision. But in the end, I think actually when you look around this cabinet, lots and lots of these people have served in positions before. Very few of them are new faces. An example, Dominic Raab, who was Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary under Boris Johnson, is back being Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary under Rishi Sunak. And, you know, for a degree, I think there will be, again, a level of disappointment and frustration amongst some Conservative MPs about that, but Rishi Sunak's made it clear that what he wants to do is reflect not just the different factions within the Conservative Party, and he has done that today by keeping some Boris Johnson supporters, keeping some supporters of Liz Truss, but what he really wanted is on ministers who had quite a lot of experience already inside government. His entire speech today, Michelle, was about how these are serious times, that he is a serious politician, willing to take difficult decisions, that he's someone who's going to be of professionalism and integrity, and that is why I think we're seeing it somewhat reflected in his cabinet choices today. But it is an historic day. I know we have these now, it seems, almost every second day in Downing Street, but an historic day that we have had our third Prime Minister in the space of 2 months, but one who is the youngest in over 200 years, the first non-white Prime Minister of this country, and also an incredibly wealthy one, but one who's going to face the toughest in-tray of any Prime Minister, I would suggest, maybe since the end of the Second World War.
Indeed, he will, and he's not deterred. He's going for it today. Many people, just before I let you go, Darren, I can see the inbox. Many people are getting in touch asking, where's Kemi Badenoch? What do we know so far?
Yeah, she is still in there. Now, she is the International Trade Secretary, isn't she? There was speculation that she may move to education. Gillian Keegan, though, has got that job instead. I think she may well remain in international trade. I think it's a bit of a strain on her family. She's got a young family. Obviously, international trade deals involve an awful lot of travelling, but I think she does quite enjoy it. We're going to have to wait and see, but she may well stay in that post. But she is definitely in the cabinet. And again, that is the kind of the depth and the spread with which Rishi Sunak is trying to achieve here. It was notable that both her and Suella Braverman at the weekend came in to row behind Rishi Sunak rather than Boris Johnson, and they've clearly been rewarded for that in this reshuffle today.
Darren McCaffrey, fascinating stuff. I shall leave you for now. Lots of you guys at home getting in touch, and I've got to say, guess what? I can feel the positivity, and I like it. John says, Michelle, for the first time in a long time, I am starting to feel confidence again in our great country. Bill says, I have changed my mind. Rishi has played a blinder and may well win any future election. He says Starmer should be very worried indeed. I'll be asking Peter Edwards whether or not he should in just a second, but for now, Jacqueline Foster, how do you feel today?
Well, we move at speed.
We certainly
move at speed. All's changed since I was here last week, I think. I think what we've had to do now is come behind the decision that's been made, albeit it's been made by the parliamentary party. So I think you're quite right to point out there's a lot of disgruntled members of the party, but that is the structure by which we choose a leader. Perhaps that's something that they need to look at in the future, but we can't go back on that. Rishi has been chosen, and what we have to have now is a real united party behind him, because I think has been mentioned, the in-tray that he's actually inherited is absolutely overwhelmingly difficult. And so looking at the appointments, obviously you'll probably come onto that, but it's, he has a responsibility now to get the right people in the right place, make sure all angles, all parts of the party are represented at the highest levels, and they're going to really have to pull together.
Do you think they will?
I do, yes, because now it's about what's going to happen in the future. I mean, from my point of view, all of these dramas have taken place. Everything's been happening over these last few months. We've had a couple of years of absolute hell, actually, in this country with COVID and now Putin and all of these terrible challenges we've got. But there's another reason why I'm in politics and why I'm a Conservative, and that's because I don't want a Labour government.
Do you, Peter Edwards, want a Labour government right now? Do you think that is the answer? Because many of my inbox are saying that this is the government that would, how can I put this, stop you in your tracks, Labour, that you wouldn't get past this government, this cabinet, would you?
Well, of course I want a Labour government, but let's talk initially about Rishi Sunak, because it's often said you get one chance only to make a good first impression. So I think the first 24 hours, it is about presentation. Clearly, the first 24 hours have gone well for the government. He's had a benign media response, as you can see on the papers today. He's reached out to different parts of the party, and there's lots of things that mark him out as a contrast before. He's young, he's energetic, he's made a big stand on personal integrity. Now, I think lots of the problems we have as a country, especially the cost of living crisis, do go back to the Tory government, and they go back to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, particularly, which was previously Rishi Sunak, and we'll come on to all these things. But just as Labour's poll lead over the summer was perhaps slightly inflated because there was one outgoing Prime Minister against Boris Johnson, then another incoming and outgoing Prime Minister in Liz Truss, it will moderate, and it looks likely there'll be a bounce for Rishi Sunak. Over time, Labour will chip away at that, and I still think Labour have the right economic policies, but speaking to my friends in the party, we've got to be realistic that a young, energetic Prime Minister is going to have a bounce, but this is on day one only.
A bounce on day one. I've got to say, I feel quite energised tonight. I've been sick to the back teeth of all of the political goings-on. I worry, I genuinely worry right now for a lot of people in this country. Times are going to be very hard. Times already are very hard for many people, I know that. We're going to come on in terms of the policies and what the priorities should be of this new government and the new Prime Minister, but I feel optimistic, and I know that you were very kind of into the concept of Boris Johnson. You thought that he was the right person for the job. That didn't happen, and I think a lot of people initially were very disappointed. My inbox certainly reflected that when he pulled out of the race. There was a lot of despondency, frustration. But I do get the sense, though, Jacqueline, that people are kind of like onwards and upwards, forward we go.
Well, I think the problem was, I think Boris was treated very poorly. I think he was treated very badly, and I didn't like a lot of the machinations that went on for a very long time. That was before he was actually forced to resign in the end. When we got past that and we had the first round of who's the next Prime Minister, as you know, I was on here, I supported Penny Mordaunt because it was Penny and then some others, obviously, Rishi too. And I thought she could have been actually the right person to take that forward. Notwithstanding that, despite the fact she didn't get into the final two, I actually then supported the mini-budget, not necessarily at that time, for that time, because timing is everything.
Yeah, disastrous.
But I am a small state, low-tax Tory.
Agreed.
And what is absolutely clear is we can't continue, despite all these challenges, but as soon as feasibly possible, we need to get back to what the Tory philosophy is. It's not possible at this moment, because of the challenges and obviously the massive borrowing that's had to take place with COVID. And we're talking hundreds of billions here. And then obviously, you know, if it wasn't bad with the Chinese authorities covering up COVID and, you know, that didn't help from the very beginning and the cost that we then obviously have Western Europe pretty well held to ransom by the Putin regime on energy.
Well, yeah, and I want to come into the policies in a second, but for now, Boris Johnson, when he stood down, I imagine that many people in the Labour Party kind of just breathed a sigh of relief, did they?
I don't know about that, but I think there's a widespread recognition everywhere in the media, in politics, that Boris Johnson had been called Lazarus-like for his ability to make comebacks when he'd been in scrapes that would have extinguished the career of many other people. Now, I think Liz Truss didn't have the communication skills or the plan really to do that. Rishi Sunak, well, that will be very interesting to see, because remember, I think he did the right thing with furlough and he got very positive reviews during a pandemic. But then as soon as there was any prime ministerial type heat, remember the imbroglio about his wife's tax affairs, the inherited wealth his family has benefited, his response, and this is the scrutiny a prime minister will face every single day, his response was panicky and a little bit bad-tempered. So will he show the kind of sang-froid, the calmness to ride out the storm? Because it is a different job being in number 10 rather than 11. Let's wait and see. You can see where the Labour attacks are going to come from. I don't think it's about being rich. It's about being out of touch. Let's see if he's got the communication skills and the plan to live up to the rhetoric of the first 24 hours.
Yeah, and you say the communication skills. I've got to say, when I saw you say it was a speech, it was a few sentences yesterday, I just thought it was a bit weird. And I don't mean to be rude, but I found the style of communication, the kind of really obsessive reading the auto cue and then pausing at the end and kind of going, I just thought it was a bit odd. And today, I thought it was much better. I thought it was very, very strong today. Penny Mordaunt, you mentioned Penny Mordaunt. There's been a lot of discussion today about whether or not she should have got a slightly better job in Cabinet. Of course, she's remained Leader of the House of Commons. Do you think she should have got, I don't know, some people saying perhaps Foreign Secretary?
Well, I like James Cleverly very much, and I'm very pleased he's remained, obviously, in one of the top roles. But having said that, I think Penny Mordaunt has shown herself through 2 election processes now to be robust. She had, I think she organised herself well. I think she also was very grown up about the way she took part in these elections, which can be quite ferocious. And she had a strong message. She had a good following. But clearly, once you got to the second time, and then Boris had come into play. Obviously, didn't in the end, submit the candidature. But then it was really a different story in terms of where the parliamentary party were. But she's very popular in the country, and I know how the membership, we're all membership, and we know what they react to too. But nevertheless, I think she should have. I mean, the leader of the House of Commons is a very, very important role, and you're covering all sorts of subjects all the time. And she's very adept already at doing that. But I think she should have been offered. I would have liked to have seen her get to be Foreign Secretary. I think she was well placed, actually. That's not saying that James Cleverly won't do a good job, because he's there at the moment, and. But I think that's a bit disappointing for her followers and her supporters.
Yeah, and I was asking Darren McCaffrey at the start of the programme what happened with Kemi Badenoch. Of course, she was in number 10 as we just started this programme. We've had it confirmed now. She is Secretary, International Trade Secretary there, and Minister for Women and Equalities. Lots of you were emailing in at the start of the programme asking about Kemi, so now you know the role. How do you feel about that? The right role? Would you have liked to have seen her somewhere else? And one of the Labour attack lines, as I understand it, is Boris isn't there, but basically it's the same old cabinet. So, what does that matter?
I think there's some validity in that, but it's not about Boris, it's about the track record. So, in your intro, you rightly picked out the experience of the cabinet ministers. But if you look at them, this is where history starts to catch up with the Tories. So, Dominic Raab was demoted as Foreign Secretary after the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. Jeremy Hunt was the longest-serving Health Secretary, then wrote a book saying how bad the NHS was under the Tories when he was the Tory Health Secretary. Suella Braverman broke the rules only last week and quit. And Grant Shapps has a fake name.
Well, you see, you tell me, I mean, we almost ended there on Suella Braverman. I know that lots of my viewers are absolutely delighted that that person has made a return. Some people would say that whatever's gone on with this phone and this policy document or whatever, that was potentially hyped up as some form of excuse to get rid of her because of policy differences.
But she still broke the rules. That's a fact. There may be other drivers, but it is a fact she broke the rules.
She resigned.
Well, she did resign, and then less than a week later, she was back, or she is back. Many of you are delighted, I can tell you, by that news today. Many of you are saying that you were contemplating resigning your membership just yesterday, and now you're not. Are you one of them? Get in touch and tell me your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address. When I come back, I want to talk to you about policy. We know then pretty much at least the top hitters in the cabinet. What, though, should the priorities be? Where do you want Sunak and his team's attention to be? I'll see you in a couple of minutes when you can tell me in the break your thoughts on that.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, and my panel, the Baroness Jacqueline Foster, who's the former Conservative MEP and now member of the House of Lords, and Peter Edwards, who's the former editor of Labour List, joining us this afternoon on What a Day, Cabinet reshuffle. In the break, we've had some more announcements. Michelle Donnellan, she retains her role in the DCMS, and Chris Heaton-Harris retains his role, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. I told you earlier, just in case you missed the start of the programme, Michael Gove, he's back, levelling up. Kemi Badenoch retains her role with trade. And what do you think of it all? Many people are focusing tonight in my inbox as the Suella Braverman. I think you're almost a fan club out there. Is anyone out there, though, that agrees with what Peter Edwards was just saying earlier on before the break? He was saying she had to resign because of wrongdoing. She broke the rules. That's what he says. Is there anyone out there that cares about that? Many of you are happy, though, that she's back because you think she is indeed the woman that's going to finally get to grips with the channel crossings. If you do disagree, though, get in touch. gbnews.uk is my email address. Right, we've been talking people, and just in case you've tuned in, by the way, there's been a big days going on. Nadeem Zahawi, many people have been asking about him. Minister without portfolio, basically, in other words, party chairman. Dominic Raab, Deputy PM, Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary. Jeremy Hunt remains as Chancellor. Oliver Dowden, I've just mentioned him, I think. Penny Mordaunt, we've just been discussing her, remains leader of the House of Commons. Grant Shapps, some are saying, demoted to business secretary. Jacob Rees-Mogg, by the way, resigned. Do you think Sunak can kind of keep him on track, stop him being someone that kind of causes a few problems? Do you think he's going to unite around him?
I think Jacob's a very grown-up politician. I think he was great as business secretary, and it's a great shame in a way because I would have liked to have seen him as part of the cabinet, but he's not, and he's made that decision, and obviously I'm sure there's been discussions about it. But it'll be interesting to see how it evolves, but that will be very dependent then on the policies and the direction that the Prime Minister now, Rishi Sunak, wants to move us.
Jack has been in touch saying, Michelle, I don't know why it made me chuckle, but it just did. You painted an image in my mind, Jack. You say that you're sitting watching Dewbs & Co, and at the same time, you're gluing your Conservative card back up that you ripped up last night. I don't know why that makes me chuckle, but it just does. Lots of you got in touch last night and said that you had resigned your membership, and I've been asking, are you one of them? And do you regret that now? Have you changed your mind? I get a sense that many people are quite happy tonight. Are you one of them? Carl says, Michelle, you talk about fantasy cabinet. I've started my own, and it would all be GB News people. You say it's a work in progress. You want Nigel to be the PM, me to be the Home Secretary, Patrick to be the Deputy PM, Liam to be Chancellor. Then you want Lawrence Fox on Education, Nana Chief Whip, and Tom the Foreign Secretary. Can you imagine if that bunch was in charge of the country? I tell you what, I think it'd be in quite a good place, quite frankly. Anyway, we're not in charge, so let's talk about the people that are and what their policies should be. Peter, where do you think the priority areas should be right now for Rishi and team?
Well, you kindly provided me with a piece of paper to list a few, and I think what that shows is actually there's a consensus. Cost of living crisis, war in Ukraine, fixing the NHS. I would also add restoring competence and integrity. And I think Jacqueline might say something similar, as might you, because I think there's a heated debate about what we do, but I think there's a degree of unanimity about what the problems are facing Britain. It's too expensive for ordinary folk to live, NHS waiting times, Ukraine is a crisis, cost of living is a crisis.
Yeah, but none of these things are quick, easy fixes, are they? Some of these things are quite long-term. So in the here and the now, you know, what would you like to see? We've got this, I don't know what some people call it. Some people call it fiscal statement. Some people call it a mini budget. Some people call it a budget, whatever, on Halloween. If there was, I don't know, 3 things in there that would make you stop wanting a general election, what would those policies look like?
Well, I'm still going to want a general election, but at the risk of being pompous, I'd say the art of government is marrying together the really short term and the long term at the same time. So you see that in Ukraine, where we need in a very short term to keep putting money and weapons towards Ukraine, but that allows over the long term Russia to get the message they just can't expand and swallow up countries they see fit. Similarly on energy bills, you need short term immediate help now for struggling households, but reforms on things like energy supply, renewables, not becoming reliant on foreign nations, the quote-unquote excess profits of gas and electric companies that mean in the long term we're never in this position again. So it's short-term and long-term.
What about you, Jacqueline? What do you want to see?
Well, obviously, the cost of living is the key issue, predominantly. And then you look at why is the cost of living so high if we're looking at, you know, foods, commodity, all of this sort of stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of it is directly linked to prices of food actually on the world markets. If you look at grain, you look at what's happening in Ukraine, you've got a country like that's one of the biggest exporters. And very often we sit here, we want our produce. We want to go into a supermarket or a shop, and we expect now to have fruits that were once in season, you know, 12 months of the year. And we expect them to, avocado, whatever they may be. And they'll come in on aircraft and they'll come in on ships and various things. And we've all been, I suppose, over the years, we just expect the sorts of things if you go to a restaurant, if you just go to, as I said, a supermarket. But the thing is, we can't control the prices on the international markets of some of these core ingredients, basically, that we need to have to run the economy. The same applies on energy. Again, this whole energy issue. I mean, a lot of this, of course, was caused by very bad decisions by a lot of politicians, and predominantly, actually, one of the biggest problems was Germany, because they had a very strong green coalition going over many years and became more and more reliant on Russia. And, you know, talk about when something comes up to bite you. So, again, it's how you move forward. Now, we're fairly fortunate there, but we've got to keep our eye on the ball. I'm very pleased that we're ratcheting up sort of oil and gas production. We've got to do that. I'm hoping that we can proceed along looking at shale gas extraction where it's appropriate to do that. We've got to be energy self-sufficient. We can't do it in the short term, but we are in a far better position than others. But again, that cost of energy on the world market is pushing up the price of food. It's pushing up the price of your bills. And to be fair, we have come in. I think a lot of people got something this week, I think, from the departments about how much money will go off their energy bill. It's obviously being put through by the government. And it's a very, very difficult position, you know, to borrow 150 billion to try and mitigate some of this on consumers. But I think consumers know. And I think on the food thing, I'll just say one point. We need to get behind our farmers. You know, the system's changing under for the farmers, and we're going to be able to help. Now we're going to get rid of the cap. A lot of the smaller farmers, because a lot of those subsidies went to very big farms. So the structure is different. And I think, again, you know, I'm saying to the British people and all of us when we can, let's keep supporting the British farmers. We need them. And I think when you have instances like, you know, a war in Europe and these things happening on your doorstep and what happened with China and COVID, we need to now start thinking about self-sufficiency, not closing the doors. We are international traders or we're nothing. But really looking now at how we can protect ourselves as best possible should other things come up in the future.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what will come up in the very near future, the conversation again about migration, particularly these channel crossings. Suella Braverman back in post. She will be getting tough, I suspect, on that. But I've never quite understood in recent weeks or months, what is Labour's position on these channel crossings?
Well, I just want to, before I come to that, I briefly want to come back on Jacqueline's point, because I think it's really important viewers understand, and I'm sure they know anyway, that cost of living crisis is not like the weather. It does not come out of nowhere. It's a direct consequence of things carried out by the UK government over the last 12 years, whether that's Theresa May cutting our gas reserves, government not investing enough in transport infrastructure, which is why rail fares are so high, particularly in London. We don't grow enough of our food.
Get on a train at the moment.
But Jacqueline, I didn't interrupt you, but there's a broader point. Yes,
she's only teasing. Go on.
There's more choice than ever before in supermarkets, and Jacqueline's right that we get used to having summer fruits in the winter. But it's about more than just choice. It's about we've become reliant on foreign countries for our food, our fruits, our wheat, our gas, our electric. Germany is a particularly bad case of it in terms of gas supplies as well. But these relate to decisions taken in Downing Street. They're not force majeure that just come out of nowhere.
No, a lot of them came out of the European Union. I was an MEP for 15 years. And a lot of the decisions that were made, whether we were trading with each other, whatever we were doing, those decisions were made because we were part of the European Union.
It was George Osborne that took £1 billion off transport for London, not anyone in Brussels.
I'm not talking about one specific thing. I'm saying the legislation, the regulations that came through on farming, on fishery, and all things, you know, we're talking about self-sufficiency and food self-sufficiency, but we were in a completely different regime. We now have more control for the future about how we then want to proceed.
It's not going very well, though, is it?
Let's start. I'm an optimist.
No one in Brussels.
The cup is half full this evening.
No one in Brussels prevented.
And I don't think anybody.
What do you think
thinks that anything's going to be easy in the future.
What are we on about? Brexit? It's not going very well. Are we on about that?
So I think, and Jacqueline is perfectly entitled to her point of view, but her implication was that since we've come out of Europe, we have more control over some of these key issues like energy supply, rail fares, or growing our own food.
No, I haven't talked about rail fares.
But since then, we've had a cost of living crisis. We've just been talking about how we're reliant on other countries for food. In fact, Jacqueline raised that point, and rail fares are relatively much higher in London, for example, than in Paris or Hong Kong.
Right. We could come back on that, but I'm being told I need to go to a break in a sec. But before I do, I wouldn't mind an answer to the migration thing. What is Labour's policy on this whole channel crossing situation?
Well, they've not said too much, and I understand it's very difficult territory politically for Labour. I think what they've said is that having on-sea confrontations with boats, as Priti Patel envisaged, the previous Home Secretary, is dangerous and disastrous, and Britain needs to do more on the continent to stop people who are very vulnerable and can risk their lives and sometimes die getting in boats that could kill them.
But you see, this don't wash with me. How can you be a serious party of opposition demanding a general election and then there is a key situation that I certainly know many of my viewers, are furious about this. It's causing a lot of resentment across this country. You're the party that wants to be in power, and to me, you don't seem to have a position at all. What you've just told me then is we don't want a confrontation at sea, and, you know, we should try and stop people getting on the boats. All of that's been tried. It's failing. So what is, I'm going to ask you again, because I'm still not clear, what is, if you had a general election tomorrow, this would be one of the key pressing issues, certainly for my viewers and many other people, what would be the strategy, policy and approach from Labour?
Well, I completely respect what your viewers say, and they're obviously writing in it. I would say, in my experience, while immigration has come up on the doorstep in a decade or so of campaigning, the small boats crisis has not come up on the doorstep.
Well, I don't know what doorstops you're knocking on. I could tell you. I could probably open my door now and go and knock on the closest 3 doors, and I suspect that they would have a concern. You tell me at home, am I being a bit harsh? I think it's odd and unacceptable to stand there and say that you want a general election as an opposition party and not have these policies in place for what I would call a recurrent crisis affecting this country. You tell me, am I being mean? Are you accepting what Peter says? Do you think actually it's not an issue on the doorsteps where you live? Tell me. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email address. When I come back, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to talk to you about the public reaction to all of this, because as we've just been hearing, and we hear it quite a lot now, calls for general elections are coming quite loudly. Today there was music being played, the I Predict a Riot, the Kaiser Chiefs song. So I'm pondering, what is the public reaction going to be to lots of these policy areas, to Rishi as a whole? Are we going to settle down now as a country, unite and move forward, or not? Tell me, and I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, my panel tonight with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the former Tory MEP and now member of the House of Lords, and Peter Edwards, who's the former editor of Labour List. We were just talking just before the break then about policies. What do you want the priorities of this new government to be? And migration came up because, let's face it, it was quite a surprise to me anyway. Suella Braverman back in that post less than a week after she left it in the first place. But many of you quite happy about that reappointment because you like the cut of her jib, you like the things that she was saying, you thought that she was the lady to clamp down on these channel crossings. And the point that I was asking earlier on is there's lots of cries and lots of calls from various people parties that they want and demand a general election now. So now I'm posing the question, well, what is their strategy then for something like the illegal channel crossings? I've got to say, I don't really think I've got to the bottom of it. Jacqueline, it's easy, isn't it? One of my viewers have written in to say it's easy to call for a general election and say things about what you don't like, but it's much harder, particularly in these complex times, to say, well, what you would do. And to me, that's lacking. Is it to you?
Well, I mean, you know, the Labour Party have been in opposition for a long time. And we're sitting here having a conversation. It's not just, Peter, it's not a personal comment here. But I have no clue. And I'm listening to politics every day. I have no clue what the policies are pretty well on virtually everything. And as you say, you can oppose. Of course you can oppose whoever's in power. And we do it when we've been in opposition. But if you're getting this close and you're demanding a general election, then at least you should be able to come up with something constructive. I mean, if I can just briefly touch on this illegal immigration issue, because this is not about legal immigration into this country or genuine asylum seeker. This is about, everybody knows who's watching this programme, this is about people traffickers who are making millions on the backs of human misery. There's youngsters, I mean, the normal age group now of people coming in on these boats is 18 to 35 single men. That's the truth. And despite the, all of the collaboration that we've tried to do with France, we spent millions, obviously, trying to get that sorted out. It's absolutely extremely difficult. And every time we've tried to come up with a proposal to do something, then clearly the opposition party, oh, you can't do that, it's terrible. And, you're really between a rock and a hard place. And I think Suella is the right person in the job. And so I'm confident now, hopefully, finally, we're going to be able to get a grip on this because it's not acceptable. The people in the UK are quite right to be furious about it. It's probably costing us billions, millions a day with people in hotels and then they've got to be processed. So it's a really big challenge.
And my worry is it's going to get worse, not better. But I guess where I'm going with this, Peter, it's not aimed at you, I'm aiming at the Labour Party. And I know that you're a former editor of the Labour List, so you've got a good view on this kind of stuff. But to me, what I feel like is everyone's demanding this general election, which, by the way, in itself, I think is a bit of a joke because most parties have similar leadership election rules and processes. So if they were in power, they'd be doing very similar things in terms of process. But parking that to one side, it's easy to say, oh, I don't know, I'd come up with this national energy, whatever. But where I'm struggling is the contentious issues. So when it's things like, right, OK, these channel crossings, this is difficult. If it wasn't difficult, it'd have been resolved. It's those policy areas, the channel crossings, the whole what is a woman, all those kind of things, where to me, the Labour Party seems to be all over the place and doesn't have firm, solid ideas, policies, plans as to what they would do if there was a general election tomorrow, they got their wish and they were in power.
I don't think that's fair at all. And I think Jacqueline's comments inadvertently condemn her own party, which were people trafficking is an evil trade, agree. It costs millions a day, agree. And something should be done about it, agree. But the institution at which you level that criticism is the government because they're the ones that can do something about it. Going to the Labour policies, I think it's quite understandable that you lose, as Labour did more than once. You then have a review, you appoint some new people, and you start to put together policies, and you release them set-piece events like Labour conference where I was, or big media interviews, and you might feel...
So did the channel crossings come up at Labour conference then? Was this a discussed policy with an end and an outcome?
It was there, but to be fair, Keir Starmer, the centrepiece of his speech, and that was the thing I paid most attention to, was about the Great British energy company. And actually, well, there
Because
might...
this is my point, though. These are the easy things to sit and say. They're not contentious.
Okay.
They're not really all that risky to some extent. It's the things that this is where I think will be Labour Party's undoing, Peter, because they're not coming up with proper policies. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe they have indeed got this wonderful policy.
Briefly, I know we're quite on time, but we said at the start of this show, what are the priorities? And we said cost of living crisis and energy was pretty much number one.
Yeah.
We all agreed. So then Keir Starmer has a policy on the number one problem, and you're saying he hasn't got any policies.
No.
But that's the number one problem, and he's got a policy on it.
Yeah, but
But
it's
do you
not
not
a
see how
short-term
absurd
fix.
this is? I find this completely absurd. I'm not a politico, so maybe I'm just missing something.
No.
You can't just have a policy for one issue in society. There are many issues in society, not just one, and saying, well, don't worry, everyone, we'll have a general election tomorrow and we've got a policy for one issue. It's ridiculous.
But Michelle, I didn't say that.
But you're saying to me, I'm saying, where are the policies for the contentious issues? What you're saying is, well, we've got a cost of living one, we've got an energy one. Where are the policies for the channel crossings?
But Michelle...
Where are they?
The source of your umbrage is non-existent. So to go back...
Well, it is existent. What I'm saying is you're demanding a general election. You want to create instability in this country for your own political gain. And one of the key issues, the key crises in this country, you don't have a policy for.
No, Michelle...
I think it's outrageous.
OK, so you interrupt me every
Go
time
on then.
point.
Fair point. Go on.
She's asked you about 5 times.
No, but I'll wait. To be fair to Peter, I am interrupting a bit, so go on.
Yeah.
OK, so... No one said Labour has one single policy. That really would be daft on the migrant crisis, and it is a migrant crisis of which small boats is one part of it. Labour's made numerous announcements. So I gave you 2 before the break. Another one was to have closer cooperation with France. Another one that there'd be safe passage for child migrants, the so-called Dewbs Amendment, after Lord Dewbs, who's a great hero, I think, in the population at large. And you can say you agree or disagree with these individually, but now I've listed 4. So to say Labour has 0 policies when it has at least 4 is just not true.
Well, they all sound a bit wishy-washy to me. Maybe I'm missing
But
something.
what's the alternative?
Well, I would be... So when you say closer cooperation with France, that to me is not a policy. It's an idealistic point of view. They've tried multiple times. Tens of millions of pounds have been poured into...
Hold on, who's they?
Hundreds.
And apologies, now I'm cutting in on you.
This current government have currently tried... I think it's something like £54 million or something we're handing over to the French to try and stop these crossings. It doesn't work.
But 54, first of all, is peanuts in the context of government spending of $1 trillion.
Can I just come in?
When is a...
Because we put in over 100 million. I mean, there's millions gone into this relationship with France to try and get some action from the other side. It hasn't happened. France is not a war zone.
No.
And people are coming into France through porous borders that are around the EU, and they are still coming here. And the key point is we have come up with all sorts of different policies. We've tried to deal with this. We've had no support from the Labour Party or the opposition parties. So every time we do try and do something that we think might work, they're not constructive at all. So I have no idea what their policies are, along with any other policies, because they haven't got any for anything else. So, you know, I think you can ask 10 times and we still get the same answer.
OK.
And it's not a solution, actually.
So I've given 4 policies on child migrant. So if anyone who says there are 0 policies, that they're not telling the truth.
How do you define who's a child?
Well, clearly a child is someone under 18. But I want to pick up...
No.
This is a key.
It's somebody under 25 if you look at the UN. It's 25, they say. It's not 18.
And this is
This has been a problem.
This is a key point of contention as well, because a lot of people are coming over here and saying, I'm under the age of whatever.
But that's about verifying it. It's not about what is a child. It's about verifying it. And there is a legitimate about that, because I'm a realist. So I accept there's an issue about people saying they're 17 and they're older than that. But let's go to the big picture. The viewers aren't stupid. Do any viewers think the person to blame for the migrant crisis is Keir Starmer, or do they think it's a government? To say it's Keir Starmer is absolutely laughable.
No one's saying
Nobody's saying it.
No one with a
Just Keir
straight face would say it's Keir Starmer's responsibility, because evidently he's not in government.
Jacqueline said it was the Labour Party's fault.
What we're saying is, if there was an election tomorrow, as everyone's demanding, or many people are demanding, what would their solution be?
No, Jacqueline said it was the Labour Party's fault now. She
what
didn't say
I
in
have
future.
said is
she
we have
attributed the
come
failure
up with
to the Labour Party.
solutions very briefly.
Right. Well, guess what? This will
And you
rumble
haven't come
on
up
and
with
on and on. So, for time reasons only, Nigel Farage is waiting patiently. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Thank you very much as well, Peter, and to the viewers at home. Nigel, we're just getting into the whole migrant crossing and what would be Labour's answer to that. Oh, I could sit here all day, but I know you want your show next.
Michelle, thank you. Yes, and that's a subject that will not be going away, I can assure you. And tonight I'll talk to the householder who found a migrant who'd recently landed on a beach in her bedroom. We'll deal with that over the course of the next hour. Also, are the Tories united now? Has Rishi Sunak brought the tribe back together? Will they head on towards victory at the next general election? They all seem to be rather optimistic at the moment. I don't believe a word of it. We'll be back with you in a couple of minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.